Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I am Sharon.
I am Christy.
Welcome, everybody. It's very exciting to be back as always.
Yay!
You know it. It's summer, it's hot. You wear shorts and you stick to everything. I'm telling you right now.
Yep, that's true. I love it. I would much rather have the warm weather.
I would too. In my office studio, they leave the heat on about 71 or 72, and my office is not really big.
It's pretty warm in here.
So warm. But you know what? I'll take it. I'm like you, I'll take it. Though springs were getting a little warm,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, 90s is pretty warm for springs usually.
It is. But here we are, we digress, I tell you.
Yeah. It's the start of a new week.
Yes, isn't that lovely? One of the things is I'm part of the Noom Vibe. It's an app you can get, and it's really about connecting with people, and they have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who subscribe to this app. It's a free app, but you can get on it, and there are people from all different kinds of occupations and just everything. This really cool montage of people. And so I get on there and I do talks weekly. Mine's called The Chat. But what's really fascinating about this is we just kind of grab topics, whatever we feel or whatever resonates. And one of the things you and I were talking about was the ego.
Yeah.
And so I did a talk Monday on the ego, and I thought, you know what, it's something that really resonated, and a lot of people jumped on and really had a lot of different input as to the ego and stuff like that. And I think the reason that we were talking about the ego is because I think people get confused sometimes between the ego and confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think that learning to identify when it's ego versus because their confidence is healthy,
Absolutely.
but ego can sometimes get in the way.
You know what, it can. And I think, you know, one of the things I was explaining was that when it's ego, there's this strong emotion attached to it. It can be, oftentimes it's a negative emotion, even if it's positive. If you feel like you've accomplished something, it's short-lived because it needs external stimuli. Whereas confidence is an internal thing. It's something that we build internally.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if there's something we're rejected or whatever, you're just like, okay, on to the next you go. I'm confident enough in what I'm doing that I know there's something better,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not a reflection of who I am.
Right.
Whereas the ego, oh, hell no. Come here. I want this. I want this. I want this. And that's what the ego is. It's I want.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. Do you have times where you know your ego got in the way of you?
Me? Well, sure. I'm sure that it has. And it creeps up on people and you don't even realize it, I think. But what I know for sure is that ego usually it comes from a place of competition. And that is such a really bad setup because through that you are comparing yourselves to others.
Well, you put your thing in, there's a winner and there's a loser.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing is, one of the things that we really promote on this podcast is, you always say it,
Collaboration versus
competition.
competition.
And that's what it is. It's really hard for the person who is very ego driven to collaborate with others, because it's about, once again, it's that recognition. It's whatever that is, whatever it comes from, you know, it's different for everybody. But once again, there's a very strong emotion with it.
But I think that's a really great indicator. I think that if you can look at, if are you coming from a place of collaboration, of building others up too, or are you coming from that place of competition? I think that really helps you identify the ego piece of it.
You know, one of the people who jumped on yesterday, he said ego when we can, you know, it's ego when it's not echo, you know, when we're not doing about the planet, the ecosystem.
It's not about the
ecosystem and all of those things, ego versus that. And not versus, but you can tell the difference between, because one, once again, is that collaborative thing that people do versus when it's more about that, more individualized. And understand this, that's not to say that we still do not take care of ourselves first, because taking care of ourselves is not a selfish act. It is a selfless act for the individual. which then becomes a selfless act for the other people that we're able to engage with and assist or be a part of their lives. I think it's hard for people to discern where's my ego versus this. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like you said, I think it creeps up on you.
Exactly. And that's why I say I think that you have to really look at, are you doing something from a place of, like I say, we're collaborating where you're not in competition with other people and trying to outdo some or outshine or that kind of thing. Because if you are giving from a genuine place and you are able to put that out there in a positive way, then it's going to play out with other people and it's going to be a benefit to them as well.
Well, and I think you're right. And then I think also when you're in that place of, you reach that pinnacle will never be enough because it becomes a competition. The ego wants to continue to be fed. I
Yeah.
always think a little Pac-Man.
Yeah, it's never satiated.
Exactly. Because and the reason why is I think because our ego is fragile. It's not strong like confidence or having self-esteem or those kind of things. It doesn't have that strength once again because it needs to be fed from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
What I loved about when I was doing this talk is different people got on with different ideas of ego, and that's what I love. It's when we have the ability to exchange ideas, and if somebody's idea of ego is different than mine, it's just different. It's not a matter of I'm going to convince them. That becomes ego because then I have to be right. There is no right or wrong in this.
Exactly. And that's exactly how it creeps in too, I think, is that it's often a need to be right or a need to make others see things your way.
And that starts early on because you think about little kids. Are they ever right? Not with adults.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. They're always told, no, that's not right. No,
that can
that's
last
not
into
right.
the adult years, and I think it
Yes.
causes issues.
And then what happens is now this kid is always looking to be right or whatever. And I get it. And sometimes it's the way in which we present to a child that they're not correct. You know what, honey, there's a different way of looking at this. This is how everybody else looks at it. This is how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I mean? Which doesn't diminish what their experience is, because remember, their world is this big,
Yeah.
in comparison to this vastness. The more you age, the bigger that world becomes,
Yeah.
that expansion. But I know early on in my career, I can identify it as ego because I was like, oh my God, I can't take time off. No, my clients, I got a call. Oh my God, because you put more importance on you than there is. And the truth of the matter is I'm just a little chain in all this big of everybody's life. I'm one link. I am not the chain.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to that place where you can realize that, then you start trusting in the process of what you are doing.
We've talked about one of the places that I feel like that you really see it show up is in people's driving. You see the ego show up in people's driving a lot of the time. I mean, and I've used that example in the past, people not being mindful as they drive. But a lot of the time, it is a total competition when they get out there on the road and they think that they need to be first in line. And it causes problems.
Ego is a sense of entitlement.
Yes.
And ego feels entitled. And oh my God, this last weekend, we were out watching AJ Robb's fight, and kind of sad and disappointing. He got a severe cut and they had to stop the fight. But his positive attitude, I'm ready for the next one. But just the drive over there to Denver and stuff, just how you could see that people not caring about, there was traffic. I'm going to get there. I have this, that sense of entitlement is ego.
Yeah.
When I feel I'm entitled to something, that is my ego.
Mm-hmm.
What are we entitled to?
That space on the road right in front.
You just make the turn right in front of you.
Yes. Yeah. It's crazy. But you see it. It's very prevalent when people are driving.
It is. And it's when we get into these things of people wanting to be right, or to bully people into believing what they believe or whatever. It's none of that stuff. It really is when we have the ability to listen to other people's ideas and their beliefs, whether they're religious, political, this belief, that belief, whatever it is. And we're able to have that relationship with them without thinking that my way is the right way. That is ego. When I
Mhm.
sit there and say, you believe the way I believe because I'm right and you're wrong, that's ego
Mhm.
because it shows no regard for that other person. It shows no regard for what their journey is that brought them to their beliefs.
Right.
And that's a huge thing.
Exactly. We all have different experiences that have shaped us and shaped our view of the world.
And I think you have to be willing to do that introspection because I know early on in my career, I had to sit down and really do that introspection and say, wait a minute, why are you making this about you? Is this your therapy or theirs? It's theirs. Okay, then stop with that crap.
Mhm.
And now fast forward, been doing this 20 plus years. And when you fast forward on the last several years, I always tell my clients, if you come in and whatever we're doing isn't resonating with you, you just feel like we're not connecting, you feel like I suck at what I do, I don't even care what it is, you let me know. And then because my ego's not in this room,
Yeah.
my ego does not belong here. And so therefore I will do my best to find somebody who's going to fit with you. I
Mhm.
will not leave you stranded or anything. I will help you to get to that person that you feel is going to help you even more.
Right.
It was funny because yesterday, one of the people who came on and shared some of their thoughts is they brought in the four agreements.
Mm,
And when you look at the four agreements takes ego out of the equation.
it
And
does.
when you take ego out of the equation, isn't it amazing what happens? For those of you who don't know the four agreements, it's speak your truth, basically. Say what you mean what you say. The other thing is don't make assumptions. The ego makes an assumption
Yeah.
that whatever's going on, and that goes into the next thing. Don't take things personally. The ego assumes and then takes something personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth agreement is do your best. If we all sat there and said, all I have to do is my best, then the ego doesn't, it's not there. It doesn't serve a purpose in that way.
It doesn't show up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the interesting thing when we look at ego and stuff like that. And I mean, it's something I feel like we talk about and we've really worked on to kind of remove ego, not even to remove it in our relationship.
Well, I think that a lot of times it's hard for people to identify when it's even actually taking hold and having an impact because we have these ideas about things and because we're trying to when you're sitting there trying to persuade somebody to think one way or another, we have such an emotional attachment to whatever that is. That's why we're telling this person, apparently, we want them to believe the way we do. A lot of times it happens too because I feel like that maybe you have a concern for this other person. You want to see something change in their lives because there's something they're not happy with. So you feel like you're giving advice that is going to help them in some way. So that's what I mean when I say I think it shows up sometimes and we don't even realize it. We're putting our perspective and our biases or whatever on them.
I agree. And I think sometimes too, we'll come from a place of maybe concern for the other person,
Mhm.
but then it slowly shifts to if you would just do it my way, you just got to do it my way. And I always tell people that's all fine and good when you're living their life, but we only see small variables of people's lives.
Mhm.
We don't get to see the big picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like I say, you don't know what shaped their way of thinking about a situation because you don't know what their experience was.
And I think, even like like I said, in our relationship, we celebrated, we have 2 anniversaries.
It's
It's
complicated.
complicated because every time the law changed, we had to go get married and do whatever the law said. But we've been legally married on Halloween in 2014. But we had, I guess, what would be in our holy union and
Our
our ceremony
ceremony.
was in 2003.
Yeah.
But we were together before that. So anyway, anyway, even in that time, I think, if I sit back and I look, a lot of arguments in relationships are one person trying to convince the other person to see things through their eyes instead of both of them seeing, instead of that pause. And I think we've gotten better about that, because we've been together for so long. but it's been a work in progress.
Mhm.
You know, this did not happen overnight. And do we screw up sometimes? Mm-hmm.
No, and it's really about collaboration, and it's not about how many times I've read that over and over about it's not about fighting the old, it's creating the new. So you create something new together, you can move forward, and it is a collaboration and it's not ego involved.
Yeah. And once again, that's not to say ego doesn't get involved. Every once in a while it creeps
Yeah.
in. You know, we'll be having a disagreement about something. And if we sit there and pause and we would ask ourselves, is that ego? And I think the other thing too is it's such a breakdown in communication as well. Because I think when we're giving a message and our intention may be this, but the way in which we do it comes out convoluted. And so now the other person becomes defensive or whatever. As soon as we become defensive, that's that ego coming into play.
Mhm.
I gotta be right, or no, you're disrespecting or whatever. And now you can be disrespectful, but there's a difference in how we address disrespect
Yeah.
and the emotion that we have behind it. If you disrespect me and I say, I find that very disrespectful, we need to not do this, that's
Mhm.
very different because I don't take it to that emotional thing of, oh my God, you've crushed me. There's not that strong emotion to it.
When the emotion comes into play, that's when it's hard to let go of it. So we've heard different people say about different tips that you can do to remove yourself from a situation. But like you said, don't stay stewing over whatever that argument was or why you feel like you were right or this person's not hearing what you're saying, obviously. If you sit there and do that, you're going to come right back to it. If you move away from it and say, we've heard, I know that different people that come on and talk with you on Noom have given different examples of things that, go do an exercise, go do something else, remove your mind from that topic. And then when you do that and you come back to it, it takes the charge out of it.
And that's what's really difficult for people with ego
Yeah.
is they have a hard time removing themselves because that ego needs to be fed. And one of them asked me a question. They said, well, if your parents or whoever kind of teaches you to be a perfectionist, is that ego? And I said, no, because you're being a perfectionist for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I said, ego is ego, me. It's all me, 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 me. Whereas that is you're doing it for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. There's that internal versus external thing that is taking place there. Sometimes when clients come in, I can tell somewhere along the line there, it's their ego that's been affected in something, which then ego then plays into our lack of self-confidence and self-esteem because we're constantly trying to do those external things to gain something.
Yeah.
And I always tell, and then so my job becomes to help them look at what is that internally for me? How do I find that within me in order to help other people? But I think the other huge thing that plays into this, and this is my philosophy, don't know if it's anybody else's. All I know is it's mine. I do not talk with people about failures. People do not fail. We are in practice. Every single thing we do in life is practice.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we practice till we perfect it. Sometimes we practice and we're practicing and then we realize, that ain't for me. And how many times people will continue to do something because the ego does not want to be a failure because somebody else thinks they're a failure, which therefore I'm a failure. And what happens is that creates all this underlying crap that we don't need. But if we start teaching people that in life, it's not about your failures. And we look at the greats and their great minds, they didn't fail all those times. They were just practicing till they got to what they knew, whether it was Nikola Tesla, whether it was Einstein or any of the other greats. It was not about failures.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I practice until I can get it.
Mm-hmm. Or it's a learning experience and you learn that it's not something that resonates with you. So it's not something that you even need to pursue. And that's okay. We're not all given the same gifts and talents.
Oh, that's a huge one.
So it's, I mean, all that means is you have time to pursue whatever is.
But see, the ego will have you pursuing something if it feels like it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I can't be a failure. So I'm going to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it because I'm going to be the best at this, even if I freaking hate it. Isn't that sad when you
It's
think
really
about
sad.
that? I mean, we shouldn't be doing this,
Mhm.
but it's something that is taught once again when we sit there and talk about failure. And people think that they take that word failure and put it into a positive, but internally, it still feels the same for people.
Mhm.
It makes you feel less than.
Exactly.
And if
Yep.
I feel less than, then I'm going to do everything to feel like I am.
We've got to stop comparing ourselves to others.
Well, not only, yeah, and we got to stop doing the things that we perceive are what we would call within a norm, or if I just do this, and it's interesting because when we were listening to Yo Quiero Dinero and we listened to those people, how many times that same thing of, oh, in order to have the American dream, you go buy a house. In order to have American dream, you go get married. And how we heard, I bought a house and I'm sitting there like, now what? I still didn't feel what I was supposed to feel because we can't live other people's lives.
Mhm.
And the other thing, I got married and oh, that wasn't for me. When that was like, okay, got to get away from that. But then it becomes that introspection. When we're doing that American dream or whatever, that's still like a competition.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And we have to keep upping the ante. And then the ego sits there and says, oh, well, Christy can't have this and not me. And how many times in relationships I will see this happening?
Mhm.
Oh, I love this. When the woman makes more than the man. No, I have that. I've had that. Oh, I think it's getting less and less now.
Mhm.
But early on, oh my goodness. No, 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 no. I remember asking a client, is that your pride? Well, no, it's not about pride. And no, it's about your ego.
Yeah.
And he kind of sat there and he goes, what do you mean? I said, because you have this idea, it's your ego's hurt.
Well, and I think too that society feeds that a lot too. So I think there's a misconception among them too to think that there is that requirement, that they should be the main breadwinner or whatever. That's the thing that they've always been fed.
And then if you're not the main breadwinner, then you're a failure, even though, and I asked him, I said, in your relationship, I said, do you guys get to go do the things you want to do? Yes. Do you drive the car you want to drive? Yes. Did you do that on your own? No. No, it's because you're working together as a team.
Exactly. That's that collaboration again. And there are other things that you can do to contribute to a household. It's not just monetary. What everybody brings to that relationship and that family unit is valuable.
Like I don't like to do dishes. I will cook every day, so long as I don't have to do a dish.
Thank God I don't have to cook.
But we don't sit there. And I wonder if it's ego when it comes to the dishwasher. No.
Well, if you don't load it right.
Now, all of you out there, if you don't load it right, what is that, ego? I do it better than you do.
No, I can just make it all fit.
Oh, it's not about that.
See? That's my perspective.
But even things like that, and I guess the whole purpose of this podcast is, like I said, when I was doing Noom Vibe and just that whole thing of, and I was surprised at how, I had about 200 people jump on and, it's like you start listening and people jumping on saying, well, yeah, I know when they were able to identify when ego got in the way, they were able to identify how once they were able to remove themselves from ego, something changed dramatically in their life.
Mm.
And I know for me, I feel like for me, that is also the case when I learned to remove ego.
Well, and it's a process that, it's over our lifetime. It's an evolution. You just are able to recognize it, I think, the more as you go. And then you can learn that you need to put some space between you and the emotion that goes with it. And then you're able to see things clearer and understand when it's ego coming into play.
And oh my goodness, to feed the ego takes so much energy.
It does. I mean, look at all the people trying to keep up with the Joneses, as they say.
all of it still stems from ego.
Yeah.
I want to have what you have. I deserve. And you may deserve that, but if it's creating that feeling in you, because I think everybody deserves to be healthy and wealthy and have wonderful relationships. I think everybody deserves that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it should have negative, when you start to have those negative feelings and emotions around it, then we start to see the ego at play.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, when when we look at like narcissists, their ego is extremely fragile and they're constantly needing it fed.
Which is interesting because they come across as not having any problem with ego.
Well, they do, but they do a lot of work to keep that.
Mm.
They do a lot. They need that adoration. They need all of those things. I need to be the best at this. And they'll talk often about what they're good at their accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ask them something like, how many jobs have you had in the last 3 years? 10. Why do you think you've had 10 jobs? Well, because they mistreated me, or I did it the right way and they didn't. This is what it becomes.
Right.
And that's that ego. It needs to sustain itself. And I think that on this podcast, it really is about the journey, and it's about being able to say, my ego gets in my way sometimes, but it's also you have to be able to slow everything down, to be mindful, to have that introspection. And one of the hardest things I think for people is to truly be honest with themselves.
Yeah, because it requires an accountability that a lot of people don't want to accept.
Oh my goodness. And people who deal in ego don't want accountability.
Mm-mm.
And understand that this is not saying it's good or bad. It's just saying that ego can be very detrimental and get in the way of people truly being the most successful, happy, and healthy that they can be.
Mm-hmm. Because if you're constantly trying to outdo somebody else, you usually are not feeling good.
And I'm telling you, early on in my career, I was working a lot of hours. You name it, I was doing it, all the training. I mean, I was going 90 to nothing. And the thing is that eventually realize, when you sit down and you ask yourself, why are you doing this? It becomes, once again, you start to feel like your role in people's lives is more valuable than it is. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow. Oh, I'm not as valuable as I thought. But the thing is to realize, I had to realize I wasn't as valuable in their life as I thought, because this is very transient. So as a therapist, it's very transient. People come and they go, come and go, come and go. We don't really know the results of what happens with us. I mean, like I said, I'm always grateful to those clients who, 5-10 years later will send me something and says, oh, I had one, I graduated with my master's degree. One just got a really cool achievement. And I'm there like, oh yeah, that's really, but I'm only, once again, a very small piece in that whole entire process of their life. I'm transient once again.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to accept that but also to realize that even if you're transient in somebody's life, be present, be the most present you can be, give the most authentic piece of who you are. And that's all we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in competition with other therapists or things like that. I will gladly refer people. You get to that place where you understand it's not about me. I'm so good. I can take on all these clients and I'm the better. No, we all have different flares and different things. And in relationships, we're going to resonate with someone. We're not going to resonate with others.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you really have to realize that it's not that you have all the answers, it's that you're helping them to find the answers for themselves.
And I think, even when you look at relationships and how many times I will have people who are holding on to a horrible relationship, but then it gets, well, I can't end this because then I'm a failure. Really? What does that even mean? You're going to stay miserable? And oh my gosh, how many times I hear that? And even for my client, oh, my clients have been married, my parents have been married this many years, they're miserable. And then oh, my parents are divorcing, all happy.
Yeah, hey, I mean, what are you bringing to that other person if you're only coming in like 50%, like saying I'm showing up because I have to. I don't know.
Well, and you'll even see ego come into play, when people are divorcing, and I always tell my clients, at no time do you have to be mean, disrespectful, dig up dirt,
Oh,
sling mud. I said, you do not. But how many times I will see that happening? And once again, sometimes it's ego.
yeah.
How dare you leave me?
Mhm.
Those kind of things. Instead of your leaving me may be the best thing for me, but we get so messed up in that.
Maybe the best thing for both of you.
Absolutely.
But when you stay in a relationship that long, and if it has been that way, you've been letting this build up all that time. And I think that's why a lot of people get, kind of vindictive and do those kind of things.
And I'm going to say my first relationship was I was in with for 10 years, and I was grateful we didn't get to that mudslinging, but I do think that maybe it was ego that kept us in the relationship longer than it should have been too. And it's just that thing of, it's okay if I say, and I love that too. I will be in here talking to clients and they'll say, well, I don't want this marriage. I really want to leave this marriage. And then heaven forbid the other one says, I'm filing for divorce. What? You're filing for divorce from me? Do you see what I mean? That's ego. Now they're fighting over, I'm the one who's going to file for divorce. Look, and that's what I told one of my guys. I said, I'm sorry, did you wanted this relationship over, right? Yes, but you don't understand. I said, yeah, I do understand. You wanted the relationship done. Now the relationship is being done, but now you're upset because the other person filed first. I said, I don't understand. That's ego.
Yeah.
That is ego, because I'm the one who gets to choose. I'm the one who gets to decide when this is going to end, blah, 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 blah.
And it could be even just how they think everybody else is going to perceive it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the one that's been wronged, so I should be the one filing.
And once again, that's all ego. I tell
Yeah.
people, for goodness sakes, if it's what you want, don't care who makes the first move. But when you let ego come in, then they will fight to keep a marriage or a relationship that they just told me how much they hated it 3 weeks in a row.
That they were already done with.
And they're like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We just work through it. We just keep plugging away. That's what we do. But yeah, and I think that's what it is ego keeps us in horrible relationships. It keeps us in horrible jobs,
Mhm.
all of those things. But more importantly, it keeps us stuck,
Right.
in that place where we're not having the growth and development that we need. And so I always tell people, and using the 4 agreements is perfect. And if you have not read the 4 agreements, highly, highly recommend it,
Yeah.
because it is such a good book. Don Luis, I think is
Ruiz, I believe.
Ruiz, maybe. Okay. Don Ruiz. Yeah, I believe so. But he haven't. But if you follow the 4 agreements, if you're speaking your truth, it's not about somebody else. It's your true, authentic thought or feeling. If you don't make an assumption that when the other person is speaking, that it's about me, because as soon as I do that, now I've gone into ego.
Mhm.
If I don't take it personally, as soon as I take it personally, it's ego.
And you're going to get all tied up emotionally
Mhm.
about it.
And then if we can do our best. So if we can speak our truth, not make assumptions, not take things personally, and do our best, that's how we get rid of ego also.
Mhm.
And it is through that introspection. When you're able to sit and say, why am I having this strong emotional? Why do I have to be right? What happens if I'm not right? And I'll tell people, if you're not right, what happens? Does the world end? Does something catastrophic happen?
Mm.
No. Okay, then why is it important to you? I don't know. It just is. Well, let's work on that.
Right.
Let's figure out why it's so important. And one of the clients say, I do not like to be wrong. There's certain things I don't like, or when I'm told certain ways, as you go by, you continue, this comes from childhood.
Mhm.
And I'm there, but you're not a child anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not a child. And and I'll say, but you're not a child anymore. I'll use the same word.
But you're still digging your heels in,
Exactly.
just like a child. Yeah.
And even stubbornness is ego,
Yeah.
which you've gotten better about.
What are you talking about?
She was a little stubborn.
Mm.
Are we going to be honest here?
Huh. Maybe. Occasionally. Rare.
Hardly ever. Yeah, never. This is what I'm hearing how this. But you know what? And I think we're all stubborn about things. I don't care, I think we just pick and choose what we're stubborn about. We don't even understand that stubbornness comes from that ego. And it is. It's just like the little kid who digs their heels in. I'm gonna dig my heels in. I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna show you. Oh, I love that too. You ain't gonna disrespect me. I love that. Really? They already did.
Too late.
Why are you letting it affect you? Why is that person so important? And it can be a stranger. That's when he knows ego.
Mhm.
They're not going to disrespect you. And I had this. What do you mean they're not going to disrespect you? They already did.
That's how road rage happens.
Yes. And guess what? It's not about you.
No.
You made it about you. This is a complete stranger cutting you off or doing whatever they're doing, or when they say something that's rude and you take it personally, then it becomes disrespect in your eyes. If they make a comment and it rolls off you because it really isn't relevant, there's no disrespect.
Yeah. It's their bad day and their miserable life that they're dealing with. So you might as well just keep rolling.
Exactly.
Mm.
So I guess overall, it's kind of look at the 4 agreements, do that introspection. And remember, it's not about failure. It really is about practice. We are practicing every day to master something.
Yeah.
And if you're practicing it and it doesn't resonate with you, it is not failure to walk away. It's called self-preservation.
Mhm.
So you walk away from it and you go find something that resonates with you. And also, if something's happening, you're having that strong emotional reaction to it, you have to ask yourself, why is this impacting me so much?
Yeah.
Why is what this person's saying or doing affecting me? I'm allowing this. Where does that come from? It's only when we truly sit and be real with ourselves. And when we get to that place where we can be more real and more authentic, the ego doesn't need to be fed anymore. It gets to go rest.
Calm is your superpower.
Exactly.
Keep calm and shine on.
What more do we need to say? There you go.
Exactly.
But anyway, as always, we appreciate you guys listening.
Yes. And if you heard something that you like in this podcast, we hope you'll give us some feedback. You can find us on twogirlsinapod.com. Subscribe. You'll get an email whenever the new episodes are released, which is usually on Sunday.
We do our best, man.
Yeah, sometimes interviews, we have to change things up once in a while, but you can also find us Adventures of Two Girls in a Pod, Life's Journey on YouTube, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you like to hang out on the internet. And you can
Yes.
find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
And as always, we ask you to like and subscribe. That is such a huge, important piece of what we do to continue to do what we're going to continue anyway. So let's just be real. But it really is helpful for us when people do subscribe, and it's really important. There's this weird things called algorithms and stuff I really don't understand, but they keep telling me we need to have likes and subscribes and listens and whatever. So we ask you guys to support us and do that, and we truly appreciate it. And as always, we hope that you guys have a wonderful, fantastic week, and we will be back next week. Oh yeah, wait, when is the 4th of July? Is it next week? I think it is, isn't it? Okay, the 4th of July, just real quickly, has been throwing me off because it's on a Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
So it's messing with my schedule and everything. I'm all confused on it. But
So,
anyway.
yeah, it's a week from this Thursday.
Okay, so yeah. So we'll be back next week, and
Yeah.
you guys just have a wonderful time and be safe out there.
Yep.
And be your authentic self. Laters.